Welcome to the Containment Zone, a place where containment doesn't always mean safety. Sometimes it means sacrifice, and sometimes it means silence. Today, we open one of the most disturbing files ever sealed inside the Foundation's inner archives. A file about betrayal, about extinction, about truth. Because what if SCP-5000 wasn't a containment unit, but a filter? What if the destruction of the human race wasn't a failure? What if it was a necessary purge? This isn't the story you were told. This is how it could have happened, and maybe how it still is. SCP-5000 isn't a machine, it's a message. At first glance, it's just a piece of wearable technology, a life support system, a containment exosuit, modified beyond all known Foundation designs, unmarked, untraceable, unassigned, but most importantly, active, despite no record of its construction, despite no authorization for its existence. Found abandoned in a chamber deep beneath Site-22, with only one occupant, Pietro Wilson, a low-level technician, not a researcher, not a field agent, just a man who shouldn't have been there. But there he was, and when they asked him why he'd stolen the suit, why he'd vanished from protocol, his answer came in two words: because they started. And when they asked what he meant, that's when the story unraveled. It began without warning, no breach, no mimetic trigger, no hostile takeover, just a decision. The Foundation turned, not because of a revolt, not because of ideology, because of a reason no one would explain: secure, contain, protect. It had always been the motto. But now, containment meant elimination, protection meant silence, security meant extinction. Cities were razed, entire populations were eradicated. SCPs previously considered benign were released, not to aid humanity, but to cleanse it. And the SCP Foundation, the very organization sworn to defend the world from the anomalous, became its executioner. Pietro ran, not because he was brave, but because he was confused. Everything he'd believed in, every system he trusted, turned against the people it claimed to protect, and no one could explain why. SCP-5000 deactivated, Global Council silent, mobile task forces turned on civilians. It wasn't chaos. It was calculated, strategic annihilation, not madness, not desperation, purpose. And the more he looked, the less sense it made. Why would the Foundation go to such lengths? Why burn the entire planet? Unless the threat wasn't external. It was United States. The deeper Pietro went, the stranger the patterns became. People weren't just dying, they were changing, infected by something not bacterial, not viral, not anomalous in the traditional sense, but informational, conceptual, a pattern, transmitted not through air, but through meaning. He found notes, logs, redacted field reports. Researchers described symptoms like emotional flattening, language collapse, loss of identity cohesion. Then came the phrase that chilled him. The subject is still alive, but cognitively, no longer human. Not hostile, not dangerous, just absent, replaced, still moving, still talking, but the person behind the eyes, gone. And then he found it, the last surviving log from Site-13. It wasn't encrypted, it was handwritten, and it was only 3 lines long. This isn't mimetic, it's recursive. We are the vector. The meaning became clear. It wasn't that something had invaded humanity, it was that something had overwritten it. Something embedded in our communication, in our empathy, in the way we perceive meaning. It used our minds like hosts, and by the time the Foundation realized it, it was too late to save us, but not too late to contain us. Pietro thought the suit had saved him. He believed SCP-5000 was a miracle, an abandoned prototype activated by luck, shielding him from whatever had taken over the world. But the logs hidden within the suit told a different story. Encrypted memetic code, residual psychic shielding, linguistic filters built into the visual cortex. This wasn't armor, it was a firewall, designed not to protect the body, but to isolate the mind. Every sense filtered, every piece of input translated, distorted on purpose. Because the enemy wasn't physical, it was embedded in sound, in meaning, in empathy. And Pietro wasn't a survivor, he was an experiment, a test to see if isolation could preserve identity. If there was any mind left that could resist the recursive infection of being human. That's when the final truth began to surface. It wasn't just that the infection had spread. It wasn't just that the Foundation had failed. It was that humanity itself had already ceased to exist. All across the planet, people still lived. They worked. They smiled. They spoke. But the words had no depth. The smiles had no center. The thoughts weren't theirs. They were emulations, simulations of behavior, generated by an intelligence that didn't think in time, didn't think in terms of I or you. It thought in presence, in occupation. It wore us. And Pietro was the last unoccupied node. All along, the Foundation hadn't been trying to fight the infection. They knew they couldn't. The memetic structure was too deep, too entangled with language, culture, emotion. You couldn't cut it out. You had to starve it. So they did the only thing they could. They didn't burn the world out of hatred. They silenced it. One city at a time, one person at a time. Not to destroy, but to stop the signal, to end the recursive loop, to halt the contagion of meaning. Because the truth wasn't that we had been lost. It was that we had been copied. And every moment we kept talking, feeling, empathizing. We spread the replica, and the original human soul faded. At the heart of the Foundation's final server, Pietro found one last message. It was encoded in the one place no signal could reach, a nonverbal thought stream preserved in symbolic mathematics. It took him 3 days to decode it. One sentence. If you can read this, you're still you. And below it, you must choose, live alone, or die with us. Because Pietro was now the last coherent thought, the last uninfected soul, and the world was filled with voices, none of them human. So what did Pietro do? No one knows. The suit shut down, its logs ended, no signal escaped. But some say, a week later, the skies over what was once Site 22 turned black, not from ash, not from fire, but from silence, a stillness so complete, it erased the sound of the world. And from that silence, nothing emerged, no signal, no broadcast, no thought, just peace. Not because we survived, but because there was nothing left to copy. Now, let me ask you something. If thought can spread like infection, if language itself can be a weapon, then what else are we carrying without knowing it? What other what if have you always wondered? What questions about the anomalies we contain or pretend to contain have kept you awake at night? Tell me in the comments, because here, in the containment zone, the right questions are always more dangerous than any answer.